Arcane is the Netflix smash hit that has been taking the sci-fi fantasy landscape by storm. The first season is now out, so those of you who are fans or binging can go ahead and give it a go. But here I wanted to give my full thoughts, spoiler-free then spoiler-filled, on this show. And let's go ahead and start with some spoiler-free criticisms, because I don't have many, so this should be a pretty quick segment. Let's begin. God, I love a dramatic takeoff. So with this being an animated show that is extremely highly stylized, depicting a very steampunk world, I was very invested in this environment. Like, I was so immersed in this world in a way that I very rarely feel like outside of reading a fantasy epic. It got me in. Unfortunately, the show decided to undercut that immersion at several key moments with music choices that just ripped me out of the story like a band-aid on a hairy leg. And it was rather unfortunate. This is highly personal preference. You might really like the Imagine Dragons vibe they are going for, but for me personally, someone who does not like that music, and on top of that just thinks it was a very jarring choice that was like, almost felt like a trailer montage often in the middle of the show. It really disrupted pacing. It made the atmosphere become so heavy-handed that it actually was like drowning. And I do maintain a criticism I had of the first arc, where a lot of the characters are steeped and just foundationally built off of cliches that have been done to death. And I had several people who, after I said that in my criticism of Arc 1, respond, Daniel, they're based off of League of Legends characters, which really excuses and makes clear why they would be so cliche. And my response to that is, okay, so you agree they're cliche. Moving on. Fortunately, every single character is handled with enough nuance that they don't really seem hamstrung by that, and each and every single one do evolve into their own thing to either have an original take on that trope, or they just have enough personality and character that you don't really mind that there's something you're so used to seeing. I would say the first act is the strongest, and there is a little bit of dip off from there, but it's by no means bad by the end. In fact, I would still say it's thoroughly in the great territory. I found myself very emotionally hit by where this show went and how it treated its characters. It's a success on all fronts there, so let's go ahead and transition into the positives. The animation continued to be absolutely flooring from start to finish, and I do not like this style of animation. This very clay look to me has always been hyper restrictive to the presentation of a show like this, but with how beautiful the lighting was handled in care, and the difference between the underworld and the above was just perfect. Like, I have no notes. It was just an absolutely sensational representation of the world, and is a key reason as to why I felt it to be as immersive as it was. And then, aside from when these very over-the-top song choices are injected into the story unnecessarily, in my opinion, I did really like the just background score that does carry the emotion of this story. I think it is actually just scored very well, and that's probably part of the reason why I found it so upsetting when they decided to do away with that and instead just have, like, Imagine Dragons, they charm, you'll like this, Imagine Dragons. From there we have a villain at the center of this, and it's probably time I get into the initial conflict, where there, yes, is a world that is in the underground, it is widely oppressed, and there are factions at play in there who are trying to afflict change one way or the other. And in the above world we have a system which has sympathetic ears, but as with many societies, they don't exactly have the care of those that are the most unfortunate at the forefront of their priorities, which is a problem. And so tensions brew, and with some bad actors down below, things get worse and worse. And this conflict was a slow burn until it exploded, and I loved how this narrative decided to weave in a few of its key players to really act as fuses to set off and escalate things. Whenever there's a moment of possible reprieve or improvement, it's a very understandable character-motivated decision that will often prevent progress from being made. And we're also seeing the corruption of a character up top top. At least that's how it's striking me so far. That is very effective in showing how the themes of systemic issues and perspective of those in power can often dehumanize and desensitize people to the plight of those, in this case, literally down below. Far more mature handling than I thought we would see from a show like this. And again, that's because I think this show also has the advantage that everyone's going in with low expectations. And so the fact that it's often hitting things out of the park is just going to make people all the more impressed with what's happening here. And so yeah, the fact that the themes are so well complemented with the characters is something that I'm not only surprised by, but I'm thrilled by. I mean, this is just the standard, I think, today in terms of sci-fi fantasy adaptation for an original animated series. I can't think of one better put on a streaming platform. This has now joined the ranks of probably my favorite Netflix original series. I'd put it above Stranger Things. Granted, it has the advantage of only having one thought-out season. We are getting a season 2, which has been announced. It's in production. So I'm hoping the quality maintains. But this does end in a way where, well, there's clearly a lot more to be done. I was narratively satisfied enough that if I hear season 2 is just a complete terrible experience, I'll just be happy that I watched season 1, and I won't feel the need to continue on from there. It was paced well, it was clearly thought out from beginning to end, and at no point did I feel any subplot was dropped or dragging. We see characters evolve through a time skip, which is something I do really enjoy, and they all stand out from each other while being very cohesive in the results of who they've become from the treatment and environment they are grown up in. So yeah, I'm in 100,000%. This is one I'm going to care about. And if you need to be sold anymore, let me just say that in terms of stakes being high and characters being in danger, there are few shows in recent memory who have made me feel like, yes, that character you care about could die at any moment more effectively than this one has here. But let's go ahead and talk spoilers. If you don't want this show spoiled for you, get on out of here. I don't want you. Go, get! We don't want you here! You're not. Sorry, that was over the top, but it's the morning, and being loud is funny in the morning to me for some reason. So obviously the soul and heart of this show is Jinx and Vi. That is the storyline I was most connected to without dismissing what's going on in the politics of the above world. That's fine. It's interesting. I like seeing the corruption of her main character up there. It's neat. And the romance and love story that's now being conflicted and interjected with that maternal figure is very interesting. I could do a whole lot more on that, but it also seems like something we're going to get much more payoff for in season 2, so I'm predicting that's where my season 2 review is going to focus more. It's undeniable the focus of the season, though, is between Vi and Jinx, and that's what I want to talk about. First of all, Vi's relationship with her love interest was just, oh, so lovely. Not only because they are two very lovable characters who have flaws that are earned and you see them grow and evolve and you become emotionally invested in them, but for me personally, they kind of reminded me of my real life moms, where one of them is a government official who is like trying to do their best for the cause, and the other one, my biological mother, is more of like a rebel outsider. So I was just seeing these like, oh, this is really reminding me of my mothers. My moms are gay. So, and it was just cool to see something like that. I haven't seen anything like that in a sci-fi fantasy adaptation ever in my life. So it was just kind of cool to see that representation there. And then we have Jinx, who is probably the most tragic character I've watched in a show recently. And I just watched Midnight Mass, which is chock full of tragic characters, but the over-the-top lens of the world that's crafted here allows Jinx to be pushed to a level that goes far beyond what is normal or believable for a human. And you're so heartbroken for her, but it's undeniable at the end that she is a villain. Jinx has gone off the deep end in a way, and Vi wants so desperately to pull her back, but she's beyond arm's reach, at least in my interpretation of the events, and she is a genuine danger. And the heartbreak there is, even knowing that, even having just said that, I don't want her taken out. And that's because we all know powder is still there. There is powder underneath Jinx, but the layers of Jinx being built up over the years of manipulation and trauma only allow her to show through in the most minor ways. And there's even hints that like now Jinx is exploiting the emotional connection to powder, and it's painful. I love Jinx. She's so sweet. At her core, there's just these layers of trauma and manipulation and abuse that have become almost a tumor to who she is as a person. And you can't, it's inoperable. You can't remove it, but it's so That's the best kind of villain. And also having that piece of shit manipulate her, where he's buying his own Kool-Aid. He thinks what he's doing is right, and in many ways, he is. He's just going too far and too extreme. And the genius of this show, having a peace treaty be met, having, okay, he will give you this if you hand over Jinx, is just, that was the moment where I went, oh shit, like I was so into this end here. And then having that final barb of manipulation where he says, I would have never given you over, I wouldn't have accepted the treaty. And I, as a viewer, am left wondering, is that true? Or is that him just realizing he can't let Jinx go and he's trying to manipulate her to be on his side even in death? I don't know, and that's a great villain. If you can make it so that I don't even know if they're being sincere or not, but the result is still the same, I'm in. And you see Jinx get pushed so far by this, and there's a dinner scene, I guess, where she has Vi, captured and at the table, and I was thinking, like, this is a bit over the top. It's a little too much, but this show's a little too much. Like, obviously, it's stylized to a point of just being, completely unbelievable. We have, like, diegetic music from Imagine Dragons being thrown in, so I guess I can just believe this scene's happening. That's one of my few criticisms, I guess, but the end result of her firing that missile, I thought she was going to blow up the council. I was sitting there like, oh my god, she's going to murder them all. They're all going... Oh, she hit the gateway. Yeah, that's still important. Like, it was this moment of like, oh yeah, that's super bad. That's also bad. That's bad. Sorry, that shouldn't have happened. The end result is that I'm just really in love with this show. And the fact that this show was willing to kill off so many meant that scene was so much more dangerous feeling. Like, Jinx is obviously the most dangerous person on the screen at any point because she's just so unpredictable. And we've seen characters like the father figure from the first act die and children die. So the fact that, like, Jinx is now firing this cannon at what I thought was going to be the council just made me go, oh shit! But no, that wasn't that. So I get why you couldn't do that, because you'd be wiping out like half the characters who I assume, as I said, season 2 is going to focus on. But like, it was just a moment of like, damn. I think it's a fantastic setup to a series that has a ton of promise and potential. I'm not seeing really any of the cracks you can see in a good season 1 that'll implicate a bad season 2. So I'm just here for it. I'm really looking forward to seeing where Arcane will go. I love these characters. My favorite is going to be Jinx with a hearty follow-up of Vi. Maybe this is just benefiting so much from me going in with rock bottom expectations, but I loved this. This is taking away and running away with the flag of best sci-fi fantasy adaptation for me this year. It's just clearly head and shoulders above a lot of the competition 2021's brought to the table. It is an adaptation in the sense that it's an adaptation of a video game. Don't worry, League of Legends fans. I've seen the memes. I will not get into the game. Everyone I see play League of Legends is like, oh, this is great. Don't play the game. But I'm in. This is a solid 9 out of 10 for me, with a kind of weaker ending, but I didn't mind at all because I was so emotionally invested. I'm willing to suspend my disbelief for it because it earned it. Let me know what you think of Arcane, all 3 arcs, in the comments down below, and like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace!